Good you're here. Tonight we're pulling 4chan posts that are genuinely messed up. Threads that are real and deeply wrong. These stories are twisted. Like the video, subscribe, turn it up, and we'll get into it. I've worked with 2-year-olds for almost 8 years, and you get used to the weird stuff kids say. That wasn't the problem in the spring of 2021. The problem was how normal the weird stuff sounded. We were a private place in South Austin, off South Lamar, one of those converted houses with a big fenced yard and a live oak in the middle. Small operation, 2 teachers per room, 12 kids max in my group. March that year was warm already, pollen everywhere, kids coming in with yellow smears on their sleeves from the cars. I remember because I kept sneezing into my mask. The first family came in mid-February, then 2 more, within about 10 days. Different last names on the paperwork, different pickup adults, but all 3 families used the same emergency contact address up near Manor. I noticed because I do the intake folders. I didn't think anything of it. People move in clusters, especially church folks, and Austin was getting a lot of new arrivals that year. The kids were named Ellis, June, and a little boy everyone called Boo. Ellis was maybe 2.5. June had just turned 3. Boo was almost 4, which is old for my room, but his mom said he needed gentler pacing, and the director signed off. They were sweet kids. That's what I want to say first. Clean, polite, quiet, never bit anyone, never grabbed toys. If anything, they were too still. You'd set out Play-Doh, and the other kids would go at it, and those 3 would sit and wait for permission. The scripts started showing up during circle time. I do a thing every Monday where each kid says one thing about their weekend. Most of it is nonsense. I ate a truck. My daddy is a dinosaur. Normal 2-year-old stuff. You just nod and move on. Ellis said, "We had family time. Family time is how we grow strong." Okay, cute. Someone at home is doing bedtime affirmations, I figured. My sister does that with her kids. Then June said it. Exact same words, same rhythm. We had family time. Family time is how we grow strong. Then Boo, same. The other kids were looking at them the way kids look at adults telling a boring story. I made a joke, something like, "Did y'all practice that in the car?" And Ellis smiled at me, but it was the wrong kind of smile. Not shy, not proud. It was the smile you give when a stranger asks you a question you already know the answer to. I let it go. The next week I tried something. I asked each of them separately, in the reading corner, one at a time, just casual. "Hey bud, where do you live?" Ellis: "I live with my family in a house of light." June, later that afternoon: "I live with my family in a house of light." Boo, the following morning, with no prompting from me when I was tying his shoe: "I live with my family in a house of light." That one got in my chest a little. I asked my co-teacher, Marisol, if she'd heard any of it. She had. She'd written a few things down in the daily notes without telling me because she didn't want to sound crazy. "What did we do today?" she'd asked June once, meaning at school, expecting we played. June said, "Today I practiced obedience and joy." Practiced. Obedience. From a 3-year-old. Kids parrot things all the time. Kids repeat phrases they hear at home constantly. That alone isn't a red flag. What was different was that they only had the scripted answer. If you pushed past it, if you said, "Yeah, but what did you actually eat for breakfast, sweetie?" they would either repeat the script or go quiet and look at each other. That's the part I keep coming back to, the looking. Anytime I asked one of them something outside the script, they would find each other in the room. Even Boo, who was in a different playgroup half the day. He'd walk in for lunch and his eyes would go straight to Ellis, and Ellis would give him this little nod. Not big, not obvious. If you weren't watching for it, you'd never see it. I started watching for it. The drawing thing happened on a Wednesday. Free art on the low table, crayons, printer paper. Boo sat down and drew, in this careful way little kids do when they're copying something they've done before, a big circle. Inside the circle, a bunch of small dots, maybe 15 or 20, packed close. Around the outside of the circle, a single line, like a fence. He didn't color anything in. Then he pushed it aside, took a new sheet, and did it again. Then a 3rd time. I asked him what it was. He said, "It's home." I asked him who the dots were. He said, "The little ones." I asked him what the line was. He looked at me for a second, like he was checking something, and then he said, "The line is, so we stay." I said, "So you stay where, honey?" He said, "So we stay good." I kept 2 of those drawings. The 3rd one, he tore up on his own, without me saying anything, which I also noted. I put the other 2 flat in a folder in my desk. The pickup adults were the other thing. Ellis's mom was the only one I ever saw more than twice. The rest rotated. Different women, sometimes a man, all polite, all dressed the same kind of way. Long skirts, hair back, no makeup, that soft, careful voice people use when they're being watched. They never chatted, they never lingered at the cubbies. In, sign, out. One time I asked Ellis's mom what part of Manor she was out near, just small talk, and she said, "We're in Community." That was the whole answer. In Community. Not a street, not a neighborhood. I brought the drawings and the notes to Dana, the psychologist the school contracts with. Worked in CPS before going private. I laid it all out. The scripts, the looking, the drawings, the address overlap, the house of light, the practicing joy. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "I'd like to sit in on your room for a few sessions. Don't tell the parents, don't change anything." She came in twice that week, once during snack, once during free play. She didn't talk to the kids directly the first time, just watched. The second time she used a method I didn't know the name of, something with picture cards and open questions. No yes or no, no leading. She was in the reading corner with June for maybe 20 minutes. When she came out, she wouldn't look at me. She went straight to the director's office and shut the door. 2 days later, a woman I'd never seen came to observe. Not from CPS officially, not yet. Some kind of preliminary contact. She talked to Dana, she talked to the director, she took copies of the drawings. Not the originals. I still have those. The families were told there was a licensing review and the children were pulled that same week. All three, on the same afternoon, by 3 different adults, within about 40 minutes of each other. Ellis's mom didn't even come inside. She waited in the car. I heard through Dana, months later, what was found. I'm not going to put most of it here because a lot of it isn't mine to share. What I will say is that the Community was a small group of families running a very structured program for the kids from infancy. Scripts, rewards, long stretches of what they called quiet training. Nothing you could photograph. That was almost the worst part. It was all designed to look like nothing. Some of the kids were placed elsewhere. Some stayed with parents under monitoring. Ellis, I know, went to a different daycare across town. I saw his name on a transfer form by accident. I don't work at that center anymore, for reasons that aren't related. I moved to a bigger chain the next fall. Every year I get a new class, and every year I do the Monday circle. And every year some kid says something that sounds like an adult wrote it for them, and my stomach drops for a second before I remember that most of the time, it really is just a bedtime affirmation, most of the time. Back in March 2019, I was pulling nights at a private airstrip about 40 miles outside Reno. Not really an airport. 1 strip, 2 hangars, a fuel truck that hadn't moved in 6 months, and a little guard booth with a space heater that only worked if you kicked the side of it. The kind of place where 2 Cessnas belonged to a dentist in Truckee, and the rest of the traffic was maybe 1 charter a week. I was 31, divorced, doing the job because it paid $10 an hour to sit in a chair and kept me away from bars. My rounds were simple. Once every hour, I'd walk the fence line, check the padlocks on both hangars, glance at the windsock, come back. In between, I read paperbacks and drank bad coffee out of a thermos. Nothing happened out there. That was the point. That was what I liked about it. The night I'm talking about was a Tuesday. I remember because I'd stopped at a gas station in Sparks on the way in and bought a burrito for dinner, and the guy behind the counter had the game up on a little bracket TV. It was maybe 45 degrees when I clocked in. Clear sky, no wind. The kind of desert night where you can hear a truck on the highway 3 miles off and think it's right next to you. At about 1:45, I was sitting in the booth with my feet on the space heater, half asleep. I heard the plane before I saw it. Small engine, single prop, coming in low from the south. That in itself wasn't weird. What was weird was that nobody had called it in. My radio hadn't chirped. My phone hadn't buzzed. The little logbook on the desk, where the manager left me a heads up for any arrivals, had a big empty box next to Tuesday. I stepped outside, looked up, no lights. Not the red and green wingtips, not the strobe on the tail, nothing. Just this darker shape moving against a slightly less dark sky, and the sound of the engine getting bigger. He set it down clean. I don't know planes well enough to name the model, but it was small, maybe a 6-seater, high wing. The wheels chirped once on the strip, and he was rolling, and he killed the engine almost immediately. He didn't taxi toward the main hangar. He rolled straight past me toward the far one at the north end, the one we used for storage. Nobody had opened that hangar since I started 4 months earlier. I stood there for maybe 10 seconds. My first thought was that some rich guy had gotten confused and landed at the wrong strip. My second thought was that in the 4 months I'd worked there, nobody had ever landed at 2 in the morning for any reason. The far hangar's door was already open. That's what got me. I couldn't see who had opened it, but the light inside wasn't on. Just a rectangle of slightly less black. I started walking, not fast. I had a flashlight on my belt, and I clicked it on when I got about 100 yards out. Then I clicked it back off almost right away, because something in me said, don't. I don't know how else to describe it. I just knew I didn't want a beam of light on whatever was over there. By the time I got close, I could hear them. 3, maybe 4 men, low voices, the soft slap of something heavy being set on concrete. When I came around the corner of the hangar, I saw the plane parked inside, nose in, and a pickup truck backed up to the door, with the tailgate down. 2 men in the truck bed, one on the ground. Another coming down the step from the plane's cabin with a black duffel over his shoulder. The bags looked full and stiff, like they'd been packed hard. He set one in the bed and went back for another. They were all dressed the same. Dark jackets, dark pants, gloves, just work clothes in dark colors. One of them had a beanie. Another was in a ball cap with no logo. The guy in the ball cap saw me first. He didn't shout. He didn't reach for anything. He tapped the guy next to him on the arm and pointed with his chin. Then he started walking toward me, casual, hands where I could see them. I want to tell you I did something smart. Radioed it in, backed away, anything. I didn't. My feet just stopped where they were, and I stood there with my hand on the flashlight I hadn't turned on, watching him cover the 15 feet between us. He stopped about arm's length away, older than I'd expected. 50s maybe, clean shaven. He had one of those faces you forget while you're still looking at it. He reached into the inside pocket of his jacket. I actually flinched. He noticed and paused, then kept going, slow, and pulled out a white letter envelope. Thick, folded once. He held it out. 20 minutes, he said. Then we were never here. That was it. That was the whole conversation. He didn't threaten me. He didn't lower his voice into some movie whisper. He said it the way you'd tell a kid at a hotel desk that checkout is at 11. I took the envelope. I don't remember deciding to take it. My hand just came up and closed around it, and it was in my pocket before I'd thought a full thought. He gave me a small nod, turned around and walked back to the truck. I walked back to the booth. Not fast, not slow. The same pace I'd walked out. I sat down in the chair. I put the envelope on the desk in front of me, and I put both hands flat on the desk on either side of it, and I looked at the clock on the wall. 1:57. I sat there, and I watched the second hand go around. I didn't open the envelope. I didn't get up to check my radio. The little space heater ticked. My thermos was by my foot. At one point, I noticed I could smell jet fuel on my jacket sleeve. At 2:17, I got up. My legs felt like they belonged to somebody else. I walked to the far hangar. The door was closed and padlocked. The lock was the same lock we always used. I checked it. It was ours. It was cold to the touch, the way it always was at that hour. I walked the taxiway all the way to the strip. I turned on the flashlight now. No tire marks, no skid, no scrub, nothing. The strip was old asphalt with 1,000 marks on it already, so I couldn't have proved a negative anyway, but there was nothing fresh. No smell of rubber, no engine warmth in the air near where the plane had been. Nothing. I stood out on the strip for a long time. I want to say 10 minutes. It might have been 30. The stars were the same stars. Back in the booth, I opened the envelope. It was hundreds. I didn't count them there. I put it in my jacket, under the lining, and I finished my shift like normal. I did the 4 a.m. rounds. I did the 6 a.m. rounds. I signed out at 7 and drove home and slept for about an hour, and then I couldn't sleep anymore. It was $4,200. I kept working there. For a while, I told myself it was fine. Nothing had actually happened to me. Nobody had touched me. Nobody had asked me anything I couldn't answer, because nobody ever asked. The manager never mentioned it. No cop ever came. The logbook stayed empty for that Tuesday. I quit in June. Told them I was moving for family. I wasn't. I've never told anybody about this. Not my brother, not the woman I dated for 2 years after. The money is gone. Rent, mostly. Some of it went to a set of tires. I couldn't tell you now which 20s came from that envelope and which came from a paycheck, and I don't think it would matter if I could. I bank at a credit union near my apartment. Every time I make a deposit and the teller counts the bills, I watch her hands, and I think about how easy it was. How he didn't even really look at me. How he already had the envelope in his jacket before he landed. How he knew, whoever he was, that the guy in the booth was going to take it. That's the part that stays. Not the plane, not the bags, that he was right. I ran a medical waste route in Atlanta back in 2021. 3 hospitals on the north side, same loop, 5 days a week. By May of that year, I could tell you within 5 pounds what a full container from any department was supposed to weigh. That's not a brag. You just develop a feel for it after enough pickups. The way a bartender knows a pour without looking at the jigger. The container that morning came out of the surgical wing at a mid-sized private hospital off Peachtree. Red biohazard bin on a wheeled cart, sealed, tagged, waiting for me on the loading dock like always. I hooked my dolly under it and knew right away the weight was off. Surgical waste is heavy, but it's a specific kind of heavy. Mostly saline-soaked drapes, disposable gowns, tubing, sharps containers already boxed separately. A full bin runs maybe 45 to 55 pounds. This thing had to be pushing 140. My dolly wheels squeaked in a way I hadn't heard them squeak in a year. I stopped and checked the tag. Correct department, correct date, initials of the tech who sealed it. Weight on the manifest said 48. Somebody had written 48 with a Sharpie in a hand that looked hurried. Now, procedure. If a container is overweight or shows any sign of tampering, I'm supposed to flag it, refuse the pickup, and call the department to send someone down. That's what the binder in my truck said. In practice, nobody actually does that unless the bin is leaking or the seal is broken. You flag every heavy container and you'll be on the phone all day. The hospital hates it, my manager hates it, the department hates it. So most guys just take it and move on. I almost did. I had the dolly tilted, the loading ramp already down, my truck idling. But something about the way it sat on the cart bothered me. It was too low. The weight was concentrated at the bottom, not spread the way soft waste settles. When I rocked it, it didn't slosh or shift. It thudded. The dock was empty. Everyone was inside on their smoke break or covering their masks back up because the Georgia heat was already ugly at 9 in the morning. I pulled the bin off my dolly, wheeled it into the little service alcove where the trash compactor sits, and I cracked the lid. The smell hit first, and it wasn't the smell I was used to. Surgical waste has a chemical top note, iodine and bleach, and that plasticky drape smell. This had that, sure. Underneath there was something warmer, coppery, like the back room of a butcher shop right after they've hosed it down. The top layer was normal, drapes, gauze, a bundle of tubing coiled up like a garden hose. I moved that aside with my gloved hand, expecting to find more of the same underneath. Maybe a specimen jar somebody forgot to route through pathology. There were 3 plastic bags below the drapes, not the red hospital bags, regular kitchen trash bags, white, the kind you buy at any grocery store. They weren't taped or labeled. One was tied at the top with a knot. The other 2 were twisted and tucked under. I could see the shape of what was in them. I want to be careful here because I've never described this to anyone in detail, not even to my wife at the time. The shapes weren't uniform. They weren't the neat little formalin jar specimens you sometimes see going out of pathology by mistake. These were bigger. One of them, the tied one, was maybe the size of a dinner plate folded in half. The plastic was thin enough that when I nudged the bag with the back of my hand, I could tell it was still soft. Not frozen, not preserved. Just wrapped and dropped in. I stood there for what felt like a long time and was probably 20 seconds. The compressor of the walk-in freezer across the dock kicked on and I jumped so hard I banged my elbow on the wall. Here's the thing that scared me more than anything I could see in the bin. Whoever put those bags in there didn't really hide them. They put them under maybe 6 inches of regular waste. If any tech had actually weighed the bin, or if the driver before me had been paying attention, this would have been found in 10 seconds, which meant either the person doing this had done it before and gotten away with it enough times to feel safe, or he didn't particularly care if it got found. I don't know which one bothers me more, honestly. I closed the lid. I taped the seal back down with a piece of biohazard tape from my truck. I wheeled it back to exactly where I'd found it on the cart. I logged the pickup as refused weight discrepancy on my handheld, then I deleted the entry before it synced, and I logged it as picked up and transported. I don't know why I did that. I think I already knew I didn't want my name attached to whatever was about to happen. Then I walked out to my truck, sat in the cab with the AC on high, and called my manager. Ray had been running the depot for maybe 8 years. Heavy guy, ex-army, who used to say his job was 90% paperwork and 10% making paperwork not happen. I told him what I found. I told him twice, because the first time he didn't say anything for so long, I thought the call had dropped. "Don't move it," he said. "Don't touch it again. I'm coming." I asked if I should call the hospital. "No. You don't call the hospital. You don't call anyone. You sit in that truck and you wait for me." He was there in 40 minutes, which had to be a personal record from our depot. He went inside with a clipboard and I watched him through the glass door of the loading dock, talking to a woman in scrubs I didn't recognize. He was doing most of the listening. When he came back out, he told me to finish my route and go home early. He'd handle it. "Handle what?" I said. He looked at me the way you look at someone when you're about to lie to them and you both know it. "Just finish your route." I finished my route. 2 days later, I ran the same hospital again. The container was gone. Not just that one, all of them. My manifest that morning showed the entire surgical wing had been picked up in what the paperwork called an unscheduled disposal, off hours, by a contractor I'd never heard of and couldn't find in our vendor list. Ray wouldn't take my calls that day. When I finally cornered him in the depot, he told me the situation had been resolved internally, which is a phrase I'd never heard him use before or since. I sat on it for about a week. I drank a lot in that week. Then I wrote a letter to the Georgia Medical Licensing Board. No name, no return address, just a description of what I'd seen, the department, the approximate date, and the initials from the manifest. I dropped it in a mailbox 2 counties over on my way to visit my parents. I quit at the end of the month, told Ray I was moving out of state. I wasn't. I looked up the surgeon a few years later, on one of those slow nights where you're just running names into Google to see what comes back. He's still practicing. Same hospital. Better title now. There's a page with patient reviews, 4.5 stars. I don't know what those organs were, or where they came from, or where they were going. I have theories. I've read enough since then to have theories, but I don't want to write them down, because writing them down means picking one, and every one of them is worse than not knowing. The only thing I know for sure is that the bin weighed 140 pounds, and the manifest said 48, and somebody signed for it anyway. My daughter lives up in Marietta, about 40 minutes north, depending on traffic on E75, and I go stay with her maybe once every 6 or 8 weeks, 3 or 4 nights at a time. She has 2 little ones and a husband who works too much, and she likes the help, and I like being needed. That's the setup. That's why I wasn't home the first time it happened, or the second, or the third. I noticed the mug before anything else. I keep a blue mug on the second shelf, handle facing left, always. My husband bought it in Savannah in 1994, and I am particular about it. When I came home that Sunday in early October, the handle was facing right. I stood there in the kitchen with my overnight bag still on my shoulder, and I looked at that mug for probably a full minute. Then I told myself I must have set it down without thinking before I left. Fine. The next trip up to my daughter's was 2 weeks later. When I got back, the bath towel in the guest bathroom, the one I never use, was folded in thirds instead of in half. I fold everything in half. Always have. My mother folded in half, and I fold in half. Thirds is a hotel fold. I stood in the doorway looking at that towel, and I felt something I couldn't name yet. Not fear. More like the feeling you get when someone's moved your car in the driveway an inch. I told my daughter about it on the phone, sort of laughing. She said, "Mama, you're 71. You probably folded it that way and forgot." That is the kind of thing my daughter says. She loves me. She also thinks I'm losing it, and she has thought that since I was 50. But I wasn't losing it. The third time, it was the books. I keep a stack on the little table by the reading chair in the sunroom, and the order matters to me because I'm reading them in that order. The Ann Tyler was on top when I left. When I came back, the Ann Tyler was second from the top, and the Cormac McCarthy was on top. I hadn't touched the McCarthy in weeks. I only keep it there because my son gave it to me and I feel guilty. That was when I started taking pictures. Not because I was brave, because I was tired of doubting myself. Before I left the next time, I walked through every room with my phone and photographed everything. The kitchen counter, both bathrooms, the sunroom, the bookshelves. The little bowl on the entry table where I keep spare buttons, my bedroom. I even photographed inside the refrigerator, which I'll admit felt silly at the time. It doesn't now. 4 nights at my daughter's. I came home on a Thursday afternoon, the light already going soft the way it does in October in Georgia, and I set my bag down and I started comparing. The mug was in the right spot. Good. The towels were fine, the books were fine. I almost let myself feel relieved. Then I opened the refrigerator. There had been half a lemon on the middle shelf when I left, cut side down on a small plate. In the photo, cut side down. In the fridge now, cut side up. I stood there with the door open and the cold on my face, and I understood, finally, all the way through, that someone had been in my house. I called a locksmith the next morning. A young man named Devin came out that afternoon and changed the front and back locks and the little door out to the sunroom. I watched him work. He was nice. He asked if I felt safe, and I said yes, because what else do you say? He gave me 3 new keys on a little ring. I put 2 in the drawer in the kitchen and 1 on my keychain, and that was it. That was supposed to be it. 3 weeks later, I went up to Marietta again. My grandson had a school play. I was gone Wednesday to Sunday. When I came back, I did my photograph walk in reverse, comparing. The dish soap was on the wrong side of the sink. I sat down at the kitchen table and I did not cry, but I wanted to. I felt stupid. I felt like a woman in one of those movies where nobody believes her. I thought, all right, new locks and still. So it's someone with a key, or someone who knows how to get in without one. That's when I bought the camera. It was one of those little ones you can order online, no bigger than a bar of soap. I put it on top of the bookshelf in the living room, aimed at the front door and most of the hall, set it to motion. Then I called my daughter and I said I was coming up that weekend, and I made sure to say it loud enough that if anyone was listening, they'd hear. I don't know who I thought was listening. Nobody, probably. I just wanted the trip to feel real. I left Friday morning. I came back Monday around noon. The house looked the same as I had left it, which either meant nothing had happened or meant I was going to see it on the little screen. I sat down at my kitchen table with a glass of sweet tea and I scrolled through the footage on my laptop. Saturday, 4:12 in the afternoon. The front door opened. A boy walked in. Not a man, a boy. Tall and skinny and maybe 15, 16 years old, in a hoodie with the hood down. He closed the door behind him, careful, like a person who did not want to be heard, even though he knew no one was home. He took his shoes off and set them by the mat. He walked past the camera and out of frame, into the kitchen. I knew him. He lived 4 houses down. His mother had brought over a peach cobbler when I moved onto this street 11 years ago, and I had watched him grow up from the porch. Big family, 5 kids, I think, maybe 6. The house always had cars in front of it and music coming out of it and somebody yelling for somebody else to come to dinner. I kept watching. He came back through the hall carrying a book, my book. He sat on the couch, out of frame from the shoulders up, but I could see his hands and the book. He read for almost 2 hours. At one point he got up and I heard, on the little tinny microphone, the kettle. He made tea. He came back. He kept reading. Around 6, he put the book back on the stack, put his mug in the sink, put his shoes on, and left. He locked the door behind him with a key. I sat at my table for a long time. Then I remembered. 2 summers ago, I went to see my sister in Charleston for 10 days, and I asked his mother if one of the kids could water my hydrangeas. She sent him over. I gave him a key, and when I got back and thanked him, I never asked for it back. I just forgot. He was 13 then. He was quiet even then. I thought about calling his mother. I thought about calling the police. I did neither. Instead, I waited until Saturday, and I sat on my front porch with 2 glasses of lemonade, and when he walked past on his way home from wherever he'd been, I said, "Come here a minute, honey." He came. He sat down. He looked at the lemonade, and not at me. I said, "I know." He didn't try to lie. That is the part I keep thinking about. He didn't try. His face just kind of folded, and he said quiet, "I'm sorry, ma'am. I'm real sorry." He said his house was loud. He said he just wanted somewhere to sit where nobody was asking him anything. He said he never took anything, and I said I know. I checked. I gave him a new key the next day, a proper one, on a keychain shaped like a peach, because that's what I had in the drawer. I told him he could come whenever, read whatever he wanted, make tea, but he had to text me first, every time. No exceptions. He does. He still does. Sometimes on Sunday afternoons, I'll get a message that just says, "Okay, if I come by for a bit?" And I say yes, and I don't even go home. I stay at the store, or wherever I am. And I think about him in my quiet house reading my books, and it is the strangest peace I have ever felt about anything. And so, another night of darkness comes to a close, but not really. Thank you for following me this far without hesitation. Which narrative's going to echo longest? Tell the comments. There's endless material waiting in the depths. Stay vigilant. Next time comes whether you're prepared or not.